Welcome to Aquarium Live. My name is Alicia, and we are going to be going on an adventure today. We're going to be learning all about how animals use their colors in their habitats. Now, before we get started, if you would like to participate, now we have some games. We're going to be joining Captain Joe as he helps us do our discoveries around the aquarium. You can text in questions, if you're curious about anything, you have something that you'd like to share or look at in particular, you can text us at 562-286-1838. Or if you're watching this after our program or have some follow-up, you can always email us at live@lbaop.org. We'd love to hear from you. Now, I'm not alone here in the studio. I have Stacy, who's doing all of our controls. Thank you, Miss Stacy. And I have Dave, who's taking all of your text. Now, for the kiddos out there, just make sure that you have an adult's permission to text in and that you know that normal texting rates do apply. Okay, so I said that we are going to be meeting up with Captain Joe. He is from our Ocean Ranger Institute. So I had sent him up to one of our most colorful habitats here at the aquarium to see if I can start making some observations and getting into the nitty-gritty of how animals use their colors. Let's go ahead and check in with him. Captain Joe? Oh, hey! Hey, Captain Joe, what are you doing?
Why, hello there, boys and girls. It's Captain Joe here, and yes, as a matter of fact, I am swimming underneath water right now inside the tropical gallery. I've finally mastered my technique of underwater breathing, just like my idol, the harbor seal.
Captain Joe, I'm not sure if that's how it really works.
Doesn't matter. Anyways, let's just go ahead and observe some fish.
Okay. Oh, wow. Hey, the Queensland grouper. And the eel.
Oh, hi, Captain Joe.
Hey. How strange. She must be able to hold her breath underneath water as well. I don't know what that is.
Captain Joe, you're not holding your breath. You're not underwater.
All right, you caught me. But someday I will be able to hold my breath underwater like my idol, the harbor seal. Anyways, we are here in the tropical gallery, and I do have to tell you, boys and girls, we have a lot of very, very colorful fish here today.
Captain Joe, in fact, that's what we're investigating today, how animals use their color.
That is a very good question again, and we might as well do what we always do. Let's investigate.
All right, Captain Joe. Okay, so he's going to start his investigation. He started by making some observations, and I would encourage you explorers to do the same as we go on our adventure today. Now, we are, let's take a pause and take a peek at one of the animals that swam by. This animal not only had some interesting colors, but it also had an interesting shape. Let's take a peek. Oh, so the animal that swam by was our honeycomb eel. We are taking a peek at another type of eel that we can find here right in our backyards in Southern California. So this is our moray eel. This is a green eel, and it has not only this cool color to its body. Can you imagine being this color? It's pretty awesome. Look at the habitat behind, or the home that this animal is living in. Can you see anything special? Yeah, I kind of see this little rock back here, and these little nooks and crannies. And so when we're taking a peek at an animal, definitely look at its color or even its shape. So we had mentioned that it has kind of this long shape. Did you ever wonder why or how that shape might help this eel? Well, if you have these little nooks and crannies and you're an eel, you might live in these little caves. But in order to fit into those small spaces, having a really long ribbon-shaped body can help you kind of back in and hide. And in fact, that's what a lot of our eels do. They hide in the habitat until they want to come out. Maybe they're looking for food or finding a new place to live, but they will move through their habitat. They have a kind of interesting movement. Maybe we can take a peek at their habitat. We have a live cam here at the aquarium camera. And let's take a view here of their home. Do you see it? Can you find the eel in the rocks? Wow. Okay, are you looking closely, explorers? Did you see? Yeah, all the way at the bottom here. So this eel, wow, and they can get about 5 feet long. So it's just about here on me. They get 5 feet long, and it was hiding, again, in these little cracks and crevices. They wedge themselves in. They also don't have fins on the outside of their body like some of the other fish that you see here, because those would get caught in some of their rock homes. So instead, they have these really long bodies, and they also have that bright color. Did you notice? Do you notice any of those colors here? Yeah, that seaweed that they have in their homes is that nice bright green color. So if it was out hunting or maybe hiding from a predator, having those colors might be helpful. All right, we have some of our first questions. Good job, explorers. You know, being curious and asking questions is something that scientists do. How many animals have camouflage? Well, let's take a peek even at our exhibit here that we are taking a peek at. Do you notice any animals that are using their color to blend in? There are many, many animals that use color, but they use color in different ways, and that's kind of what we're going to be exploring here. So I notice that the habitat, this home that they live in, are these browns and greens and grays. So if you wanted to be able to blend in and use camouflage, you probably want to be those browns, those greens, gray color. Do you see any animals? Yeah, I also see an animal that is not any of those colors. It's a little bit darker. So maybe not all animals use colors the same way. Some animals might use their color to blend in, and some animals might use their colors in slightly different ways. Gage asks, what animals live in rocks and sand? Oh, that's a really good question. We might want to pull up, I'm not sure if we have an animal that we can pull up as an example, but that's a great question. So we just looked at one, right? We looked at the eel that kind of wedged itself. And in that photo, you might have seen some of those little legs that were sticking out. And those were from the lobster. So we have a spiny lobster right off of our coast. They often share the same little caves as the eels, which I think is pretty cool. If you come to visit the aquarium when we're open, you'll see one of our habitats here that has the eels and the lobsters together in the same home, which is really fun to watch. Okay, Gage, let's test. Can you find the animal? So Miss Stacy brought up a really good example of an animal using both shape and color to camouflage. You can kind of see this animal outlined here. It's using camouflage really well, and it's also using the sand. So this is a type of flatfish, and the flatfish, well, it's a great name. There are many different fish that are a part of this group. They have two eyes on one side of its body. Its little mouth, its lips are right here, and its eyes are right here. And those eyes stick on the top like little periscopes so that it can see the world around it, even though most of its body is buried here. And then it can hide. Now, it can hide from predators, things that are trying to eat it. It might be hiding because it wants to take a nap and you want to make sure you're nice and secure, right? But it can also hide so that if a little fish swims by, it may not see this predator and it can jump out and grab its lunch. And so that is called an ambush predator. So flatfish are excellent at camouflaging and being very sneaky. Logan asked, why is the honeycomb eel bigger than a normal skinny eel? You know, there are so many different types of eels out there. So that's a really good question. So we were just looking at the moray eel about 5 feet. And some of the tropical eels can be much bigger. They can be 6 or 7 feet long. They can get pretty large. We were learning in one of our other classes that the conger eel can be very long. I think we had said the longest recorded was 19 feet long. And we were saying, can you imagine swimming around or maybe being a scuba diver exploring and seeing this eel pass and then it just keeps passing? That would be huge. Again, that's the largest recorded. That does not mean that all eels are that big. There are many eels that are, again, around that 5 or 6 foot range, and that's still a pretty good size eel. So that's a great question. And in fact, there are even little tiny garden eels out there that are about the size of your hand or a little bit bigger, and they bury themselves in the sand. They don't use the rocks to bury themselves because there's not a lot of big rocks in their home. They use the sand, and they, again, are ambush predators. They jump up just like that flatfish that we were talking about. And then Maggie had asked, how do animals camouflage? Oh, animals camouflage in different ways. Some of them have, the outside of their body has special colors in them. There are some animals like an octopus that have the colors just underneath the surface of their skin. And they can actually control which colors come up to the surface. There are some animals that can change their color very slowly and some that do it very fast, like the octopus. So it really depends on the type of animal. There are even animals that can change how bumpy or smooth their skin or their covering is. And I think that's really cool. Like sea dragons, if you're watching our last show, they can grow slightly extra appendages out of their body to help them camouflage. Okay, so let's see. Logan asked, why are some fish bumpy? Yeah, that's a great question. Again, some fish might use the texture, so they might use those bumpy bits on their body to help them hide, to maybe look like their habitat. Ta-da! Here's a great example. This is a frogfish. Now, if it had a really smooth covering, it might stand out. It might not camouflage. But because it has all of this bumpy texture to the outside of its body, it looks very similar, do you notice, to its habitat. Because right behind it is coral. Coral is an animal that has a hard shell, and the animal that lives inside lives in a little pocket, a little hole. And so if you look at the texture here, it looks like there are little pockets here. So if you were another fish swimming by, you may not notice this brightly colored, what looks like coral piece. This animal has a nice mouth to be able to jump up and grab its prey if it needed to. All right. And then Croy asked, why do eels hide in rocks? That's a great question. If you were an eel, why would you hide in a rock? Well, there are animals that could eat an eel, a bigger fish, maybe a shark, especially if you're not a full-grown eel. Not all eels are, 5 feet. They have to grow from little baby eels. So hiding is a good way to help protect yourself. Now, you can also hide in order to be sneaky and be able to sneak up on your prey. There are a lot of eels that love to eat octopuses, and those octopuses also like to live in these little caves. So being able to fit into those spaces to grab their prey can also be really important. Michaela asked, what is the dark spot on the eel? Oh, we're going to talk a little bit about how animals can use colors to trick their predators. So I think we are going to... Oh, sorry. What is the dark spot on the eel? Oh, right here. Good question. Sorry. Miss Stacy was helping to clarify for me here. I thought they were talking about the dark spots on the garden eel, which is another thing that we're going to be talking about. This spot right here, believe it or not, is a little opening to their gills or how they breathe. So if you've ever seen an eel, to me, they always look like they're about to tell a joke. They have this little face that's like, ha. But they're, if you see them in their home, they're constantly kind of opening and closing their mouth. And that's so that they can breathe. The water goes in their mouth and then it helps pass over their gills. So we have our lungs inside and we breathe through our nose or our mouth, and it comes in and exits. They will breathe in and then it goes through their gills so that they can breathe, and then that water comes out through their gills, which is pretty cool. And then Karen asked, why are their eyes so different? Wow, that's a great question. It's actually kind of a complicated question. So if we take a look at the eye of the eel right here, it's not a huge eye. So sometimes it depends on where they live and how they use their senses. Some animals rely on their sense of sight, and other animals use their other senses. If we take a look at the eel here, it has a very small eye. In fact, they're not using their sense of sight as much as other animals. They live in sometimes these dark places, and they also hunt at night. So instead of using eyes to help them, they actually use their sense of smell a lot more than their eyes. So they have tiny eyes. They don't see that well. They use that sense a little bit, but they're mainly using their nose. Maybe we have a picture of another animal, Miss Stacy, that we can show in comparison with just a different kind of eye. We'll see. We'll see if there's another animal to compare with. There we go. Now our Garibaldi here has a nice bright eye. Its eye is much bigger compared to its body size. It lives out in the open, and it likes to show off using that nice bright color, and it's awake during the day. So it has these nice big eyes. So it depends on a little bit to do with maybe if it's a nighttime animal or a daytime animal, or how much it uses its eyes to survive in its habitat. Good question. And then Casey asked, what other animals in the exhibit?
Hey boys and girls, I'm here with our seahorses, and I found my friend
Say, Captain Joe, we'll check in just a little bit. Casey asked, what other animals in the exhibit are using camouflage? Oh, so if we go back to our exhibit, I think we had asked this question a little bit earlier, but that's a great question. You can kind of take a peek, right? What animals do you think are blending into their habit? Oh, hello there. Unlike some of our animals that are camouflaging, our giant sea bass, I think, can see their reflection in the camera, so they like to sneak up here. So we're taking a look at, again, this habitat. Do you see animals that are camouflaging? Yeah, so if you're swimming around and it's kind of dark in this habitat, you may not see some of the fish that are hiding along the kelp or hiding in the kelp. They're using these nice dark spots on their body. So there's quite a few animals. Almost all of the animals here are using their color for a reason. They're either blending in or they're using their color to stand out. All right, now I know that Captain Joe has been waiting for us, but I think we're going to play a game really quickly to talk a little bit more. So we'll go ahead and, if you would like to guess with us, we're going to play Can You See Me? Now, to try to make it a little bit more difficult, we've put these bubbles up here for our game, but there is an animal hiding behind our bubbles here. I wonder... We've talked a little bit about this. So what animal do you think is hiding? So while we're taking a look, I think we have a few more questions here. So if you wanted to text in, again, our number for our text is 562-286-1838. If you think you know, you can shout it out loud. You can tell a family member. You can write it down. You can even tell your pets you think you know what it is. Oh, so Sarah had asked, do all fish have fins? I wonder if you came up with that question after looking at the eel, right? We talked about the eel. Yeah, the eel doesn't really have any fins, so not all fish have fins. Those fins would get caught in their little cave homes. And then Zoe asked, are jellyfish camouflage since you can see right through them? Zoe, that is a really interesting question, and it looks like you've already started to think about it. You are right. There are several jellies out there that use their camouflage by being almost see-through. So if they're drifting out in the ocean, they're not hiding behind a rock or in the sand like some of the other animals. They're really just drifting in the water. So having this almost completely see-through body makes it very hard to see. I have been snorkeling in the ocean and have encountered jellies and almost didn't see them until they were in front of my face, which is not a great place to be when you consider a jelly. And that's because it was very hard to see them in the water. That's a really great observation. And then let's go ahead and see what animal was hiding. Did you guess it? Ta-da! So Ruby had asked to see an octopus. Ta-da! Here you go, Ruby. This is an animal that I think it has no champion compared to the octopus, right? So this animal champions all the other animals when it comes to fast camouflage. Again, they're able to control how much color they have in their body and what's being seen through their skin. So they're pretty cool. This animal is also showing us again that you can change your color to match your habitat, and also how bumpy or smooth. Do you see these little bumps right here? This octopus, this two-spot octopus, can either make itself more or less bumpy. They will even sometimes add what looks like little horns on the top of their head if they really want to. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and check in with Captain Joe, because I know that he has been waiting for us up in our Tropical Pacific Gallery.
Hey, boys and girls. I'm here at the Tropical Gallery, observing, hiding out using camouflage. What I found out is that these animals have many different colors and they use them for many different reasons. So, let's go observe and find out more.
Oh, now Captain Joe just showed us an example of a butterfly fish. Let's take a look. We talked about how animals might use colors differently, especially camouflage. So our animal right here, this is a type of butterfly fish. It is using these stripes on its body to be able to, or bands as they call them since it's up and down, to hide the eye. Do you see this band right here? It's trying to hide its true eye. And if we look towards the back of the animal, it has what we call a false eye spot. It's trying to confuse a predator. If a predator wanted to chase down a fast fish, it wants to grab it from the front so the fish can't get away. So if you come at this fish and you think that the front of the fish is over here, then the fish has a little bit more time to scooch away in a direction that the predator may not think it's coming in. And a lot of times that's why it has this almost invisible fin. So again, the predator may not know that it's going in one direction or the other because its fins are almost completely see-through. So there's another fin right there. So that makes it a little bit more difficult for a predator to know where that fish is coming from, which is pretty cool. And we had some other questions too about our animals, and especially about eels. Wow, lots of eel questions, which I love. So Croy wants to know, what do eels eat for lunch? It's almost lunchtime. Are you getting hungry? I'm getting hungry. The eel here, they love to eat fish, and if they can, they would probably grab an octopus as well. And again, hunting at night, they're mainly grabbing those octopuses, but if they can, they would absolutely eat fish. So those are the two prey items that I'm familiar with. There's quite a few eels out there. There are some very small eels called garden eels that we were looking at. And because they're much smaller, they eat very tiny prey. Oh, and then we had asked about the nose. Here is the nose right there. It feels very weird putting my finger right up its nose. But there it is. So it is smelling. So we talked earlier about smelling your environment, and they can smell the octopus. Now the octopus has a special weapon. You may know about it. Because the eel is smelling it, the octopus last minute can shoot a cloud of ink into the water. And that not only makes it hard for the eel to see, but it also makes it hard for the eel to smell where the octopus goes, which I think is pretty cool. And then Logan asked, how do eels wedge into rocks so easily? Again, using that nice long shape to their body. And even take a look how the eels these garden eels, not only are eating, you can see the food passing by, but they're also really easily being able to dip and dive. Oh, look, there's a tiny one into the sand. So having that long ribbon-shaped body, if they had lots of fins or they were a different shape, they wouldn't be able to get under the sand as easy, or they wouldn't be able to pop out and grab their food. So they're using their shape to be able to hide. Those are great questions. And then the question was, do snakes use camouflage? That's a great question. We don't have, I think, any pictures of snakes, which is okay. A lot of eels are confused with snakes, but they are different. So eels here are fish and snakes are reptiles, but there are sea snakes. And sea snakes in the ocean, many of them are quite venomous, meaning that if they bite you, you'd be in trouble. But they use that venom to slow down their prey. So they might reach out and grab a fish, and once they bite the fish, that venom helps immobilize or stop the fish from swimming so they can eat it. And they use their bright colors to warn not only that, to warn mainly that, don't mess with me, I have a venom. And then snakes on land, many of them do use camouflage. So our sea snakes use bright colors as warning. And in fact, we might talk a little bit more about that later. Let's go ahead and check in with Captain Joe, because I think he has found someone who knows a little bit about seahorses.
Hey boys and girls, I'm here with our seahorses, and I found my friend Jen. She's an aquarist here at the aquarium. Jen, what are some of the things you do here at the aquarium?
I do a lot of things to take care of the animals here, including feeding and a lot of cleaning.
Very nice, very nice. Now, we're here with the seahorses, and we do know that they have very long faces and very curly tails, but we're learning about colors today. Can you tell us a little bit how they use color in their environment?
Absolutely. Seahorses use color to camouflage or to hide within their environment, and because they're so well hidden, they can sneak up on their prey.
Ooh, I like that. Now, sneaking sounds very cool. Are there any other animals in the aquarium that sneak up on their prey?
Absolutely. We have a lot. They are very hard to find, so really need to use your eyes. I suggest you go ahead and head down to Blue Cavern and look at our giant sea bass.
Giant sea bass. I think that's something we definitely need to investigate.
All right, and we have been taking a look at our giant sea bass. We have a couple more questions, and I think we'll tune into Captain Joe. Give him a second to run down to our Blue Cavern exhibit. Sophia asked, what do starfish eat? That is a great question. So I have a little model of a sea star. And sea stars, they're not walking along their environment or jumping on their prey. They crawl along the water or along the bottom of the ocean. And a lot of times they are looking for animals that have shells, like a clam or a mussel. And they do something kind of crazy and cool. So here is a great photo of the underside of a sea star. Do you see all of those little dots? Those are their tube feet, and they walk along the bottom using those tube feet. They can even taste where their food is. So we talked about finding food and how some animals are using their nose and detecting where their food is. Well, they don't have a nose, but they do have a special way to kind of taste the water and figure out where their prey is so they can find that shelled animal. And then they do something kind of gross. Are you ready for this? Okay, I warned you, by the way. They will wrap around like a shelled animal. You think of a clam that has those two sides. Now, the clam doesn't want to be food, so they hold on really tight with their shell. And this sea star has to wrap around, and then they pull. They pull until there's a tiny little opening, and then they stick their whole stomach out of their mouth into the animal, and they use digestive juices to make it into like a little soup. They liquefy their prey. Crazy. And then they soak it up with their stomach. So they eat it like that, and then they suck their stomach back into their bodies. I told you it was gross. Can you imagine opening like a bag of chips and just bleh? Yeah, that's kind of gross. So, but it's cool. And if you've ever found maybe a shell at the beach and it was perfectly cleaned out, it was probably food for a sea star. Great question. That is a really interesting way to have lunch. Are you ready for lunch now? Can you imagine that when you're eating today? Maya asked, do all fish swim? That is a good question. Now, even though not all fish have fins, fish do make their way through the water. So they have to have a way to kind of swim through the water. If you're an eel, even though they don't have fins, they're using their entire body to push themselves through the water. And so in order to find their food and to move to maybe hide, fish do move through the water. They do have a way to swim. I don't think all fish swim as well as other fish. Some fish have better ways to do that, but not all fish. All right, let's go ahead and check in with Captain Joe. I think this, because of time, this will be maybe our last check-in with Captain Joe. Captain Joe? Where did you go? Oh, Captain Joe, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm hiding in this pretend seaweed or kelp to blend in with our kelp habitat.
It seems like you found a giant sea bass.
I sure did. Let's go ahead and take a closer look. Now, boys and girls, here is one of our giant sea bass. Sometimes in the ocean, instead of blending into a rock, an animal will try to blend into the shadows or into the water itself. Now, the dark mottled color of the giant sea bass allows it to lurk in the dark parts of the kelp forest, only to lunge forward when a small prey fish comes near and sucks it right into its mouth. The camouflage, paired with its careful, slow swimming, make the giant sea bass almost ninja-like in its stealth, even though it can eventually grow to weigh over 600 pounds. Now, boys and girls, these are just some examples of how these animals use color in their environment. I'm going to send it back to you in the studio, and you're going to learn a little bit more about animals and how they use their color in the wild.
All right, Captain Joe, I think we're going to talk a little bit more, and then we're going to...
I'm pretty sure I saw a striped animal in the tropical Pacific Gallery. How about you meet me there?
Okay, thanks, Captain Joe. So Captain Joe is going to investigate how animals might use their stripes. So we just learned about the giant sea bass, and we've been watching the giant sea bass. Do you notice how the giant sea bass had all of those polka dots all over its body? And also even the leopard shark that was swimming around? So that kind of coloration is called disruptive camouflage. It helps break up the colors of the animal so they can hide in those shadows, as Captain Joe was saying. Now, we had one last question here from David. Do jellies hunt for food? Oh, so first of all, let's think, what do jellies eat? Do they eat French fries? Chicken nuggets? Probably not in the ocean. Jellies are eating anything from small plankton to fish. And our Pacific sea nettles here are a really great example of an animal jelly that's a little bit bigger. So they can have pretty long tentacles, and they will sting their food. So along these long, skinny tentacles, they have two types. They can sting for protection. They can also sting their food in order to make it stay still or immobilize it. And then they can use those oral arms on the inside to help them bring that food towards their body and digest it, which is crazy. So they don't quite like seek out their food. They're drifting along. They don't have a brain, so they're not thinking about it. They don't have a plan, but they're drifting along. And if an animal doesn't see it and maybe gets caught up in those tentacles or happens to just pass by, it can get stung and brought into the jelly, which is pretty cool. All right, let's go ahead and I think we're gonna have our last check-in with Captain Joe.
Hey boys and girls, so these are the animals with black and white stripes I was talking about. These are our banded sea kraits. We have one right there, and they are very venomous animals, and they use their coloration to give a warning off to other animals. They basically say, look out, I'm quite dangerous. They're very, very cool.
Okay, Captain Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. I think we're going to wrap up. We've had quite an adventure. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much for the questions. Again, being curious, asking questions, those are really great qualities to think like and explore and think like a scientist today. We have a couple more programs for the rest of the day and the rest of the week. Thank you for joining our Aquarium Online Academy. Take care, everyone.